My name is Jamila Thompson. I'm a 5th grade teacher, coach for teachers. I'm also the founder of MedaAse, which is a nonprofit that takes underserved students from Washington, D.C. abroad. I think it's important, significant for young people, especially African American students, to travel to Africa because that's a part of our identity that unfortunately we've been cut off from, and that's led to a number of different issues. You know, we see it in our community, we see it in our schools. It's very historic, it's very old, it's very long, and unfortunately, like, we don't have the space to, you know, have those conversations or even explore, you know, what that is and what it means because of our relationship to Africa. Often students have very negative perceptions of what Africa is, what Africa has to offer to the rest of the world, and that comes from, you know, our society, you know, very white supremacist, still very Eurocentric, and so being able to go into the margins of our society, of our world, and to understand the richness of Africa, the richness of the culture, and our connection to it, I think is a really healing process for our community, especially the children. So we want them to develop new, powerful ideas about where they're from, and about their relationship to Africa and the rest of the world. The young people that I encounter, a large part of what they know about Africa comes from, you know, what they hear in their families, what they hear in their communities, you know, and not even like just like wholesome conversations, like per se, but maybe just expressions like, oh, you look African, or if someone has, you know, dry feet, oh, he has African feet, like just those kinds of negative perceptions of beauty, and I think that is something historical, something very deep that they hear from their family members. You know, oh, your hair is African, and those are typically very negative things. Recently, we've had a new understanding coming to the fore with Wakanda, with the Black Panther, and so we've seen more positive understandings, more positive conversation around, you know, Africa, around head wraps, around fabrics, around you know, images that came from that movie. So it's a combination of media images. It's also what students are hearing in their communities and their families, like things that you just pick up, you know, like innocently. And I think that's the extent of it. So if I, as a teacher, you know, bring something to the table, then, you know, that expands their understanding of what Africa is. But it's a very limited source. It's very limited sources of information, and a large part of it is what's been passed down culturally. We are going to Kenya and Tanzania this year, and so as of now, we're working on fundraising. The students do some entrepreneurship work. They sell snacks. They put on performances. They help to host fundraisers like film festivals. So they learn about budgeting. They learn about meeting a goal financially, and we're going to start working on the exchange portion of it, where students from Tanzania are writing back and forth with our students and also Skyping. Once we get there, we're going to have the students explore the culture of the countries, explore the landscape, and it's really significant because Tanzania, Kenya, those countries, and also Swahili, that's the language that African American students, children, initially learn about Africa. So we know Kwanzaa, we know a lot of the songs, we know that aspect of the culture. So in order to ensure that this experience reaches other students, reaches our students' peers, we're planning on having them to compile information about their experience. We want them to create a blog, and hopefully we can go beyond that and create a publication. So that's the thing about teaching. It's like you want to make sure you cover all the bases. You want to make sure you take experiences and expand them, and you have students create a product that they can then share, that they can then look on to years later and share with others. And that's where we are now. And this film will definitely be one of those products that come out of the experience, and that can then reach and touch other people in their lives. In the past, we've had students, I had one student, she's in middle school now, but she took a blog that we created, you know, with pictures and videos and just, you know, accounts of the experience. And in her 8th grade social studies class, you know, she did a presentation for the group of students, and this was all on her own accord. She went to her teacher and said, hey, I've gone to South Africa, can I give a presentation? So we've had students, come back and, be eager to share their experiences. So we've seen a great deal of transformation, but the thing about it is that white supremacy is such a deep thing that's so evasive. And so what it's done, I think, is help students understand the ideas that they carry and help them to examine why they have those kinds of beliefs. I recall our students meeting with poets from South Africa, young people who would come to the U.S. to visit. And, my student, he raised his hand and he apologized before speaking. He said, I'm sorry, but for some reason, when I think of Africa, I just think of like dirt. And, he was prompted to really examine like what his ideas were, to put them out there honestly, and to be okay with that, to be apologetic, to be respectful, but then to say, what's it like there, So that's definitely a first step, an important step. And then students having the experience of being on the continent. So one of my students, when she arrived in South Africa, she said, wow, they have this here, they have that here. So even after, seeing pictures, even after seeing videos, even after encountering people from the country, like it was still a surprise to her to actually get there and to experience, what she valued as being, civilized per se. But it also expands their ideas of what civilization is, going to Jamaica and learning about, herbs and this advanced medicine that supersedes the medicine of the West. Like, that's really eye-opening. So I think that the transformation occurs when the students begin to examine, their prejudices, their internalized ideas of, good and bad, and how black and white play into that. When they start to examine that, challenge that, and then they receive this education about what is really happening in the world, and how rich and beautiful, other cultures are. And then they start to really question, what can be done differently, how we can live differently with